All right, you're back in the DFSR. It's an NBA podcast. It's Tuesday. It's January 31st. I'm Doug Norrie, the owner and operator of DFSR.com, daily fantasy sports rankings.com. Got you covered for all of your NBA action, NFL as well as we head toward the big game. It's all covered on the one subscription. Go to DFSR.com. Sign up for a free 7-day trial. Going to give you the best projections in the business. There's a reason we've been around this game for years and years and years. One of the longest operators in the DFS and betting space. DFSR.com. Get you started. Going to get you started also on what to think about for Tuesday's NBA action. There's things slow down here a little bit on Tuesday after a pretty busy set of nights. Only 5 games on the slate. More of a national sort of broadcasty kind of night with the matchups that we have going here, just in terms of some high profile stuff. I don't know if it's all going to work out the way the schedulers wanted it to when they originally put it out there, with Lakers going in to Madison Square Garden to take on the Knicks. We'll talk about that game. Get the Pelicans and the Nuggets later on TNT as well, and some other interesting matchups in and around the rest of the schedule. But overall, when you get some of these national TV nights, excuse me, it can lead to some wonkiness with just overall projections, just because usually the teams are good. I mean, this is what ends up happening. When the better the teams are, sometimes the less value there is. Unfortunately, the way the NBA is structured, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, the way the NBA is structured, we're usually trying to pick off the bad teams in terms of value, because those guys the defenses are worse, so they play faster or something like that. Or there's maybe just some more variable stuff around who some of their players are, who's getting minutes, and therefore you can extract some value that way as well. So the better the teams, usually sometimes the worse the DFS opportunities. That's just the way it goes. Want to talk about some different stuff to kind of keep an eye on going into this slate. The first one, these next two pieces are going to kind of flow into each other because they are related. But the first one is how to handle blowouts. Blowouts or potential blowouts can be the bane of really anyone's betting or DFS existence, because you're staring at a game, you look at it, it's a 20-point lead in the first half or something like that, 25-point lead in the first half, and you're thinking to yourself, well, how's the fourth quarter going to roll for the guys on the starters on both teams? How's the fourth quarter minutes going to go here if this game is completely out of hand? And it can be a really, really frustrating experience. It can be just super tilting. You're staring at a third quarter, run by a team. It's 25 points, get up to 30 points, something like that. And you're thinking, well, that is the end of the fourth quarter for anyone who matters, because the game is out of hand. And that's just how the NBA goes. Blowouts are blowouts, and no one wants to run their starters or superstars through games that are essentially over. How to project for those going into the game can be tough, though, because typically a blowout or a potential blowout means that the one of the teams that you're looking at is in a really, really good spot. Like tonight, it's Milwaukee and the Hornets. The Milwaukee is a -11 favorite going into the game against the Hornets team who totally stinks. The Milwaukee is one of the best teams in the league when they're rolling full strength, which they're getting close to now. And you get a Hornets team that ranks bottom third in defense, top 4 in pace. So you're like, okay, well, is there a world where the Bucks guys are not even sniffing the fourth quarter of this game? Definitely. I mean, definitely. We've seen this is in their range of outcomes. 3 of the last 4 games for the Bucks have been games that have gotten kind of out of hand. Like they've just beat the Pelicans by 25, right? And they've won a bunch of games in a row. They beat Detroit by 20 a few games ago. They had a 10-point win against the Nuggets. So this is a world that you have to start thinking about when it comes to blowouts and projections. Now, that can get weird, though, because you don't want to just sit there and project a guy like Giannis at 30 minutes, because that's not necessarily realistic. And it's just going to completely destroy his projection, obviously, on a per minute basis. And then the thought of fading a team like this in a great spot is nauseating, because they're in a great spot for a reason. The Bucks right now have a point total, something like 7 points higher than the next close implied point total, 7 points higher than the next closest team. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're staring at the situation. You're looking at a -11 line for the Bucks which I like them to cover that line, by the way. You're looking at this line and you're saying to yourself, well, what do I need to happen in order to not get completely buzzed here and to just be able to effectively make rosters or put in bets, because I want to understand like how much opportunity each of these guys is going to have. It's a very difficult situation. I will say in some cases, this is a case by case scenario, and you have to look at the team and say to yourself, in situations where this team is going to just completely crush another team, what would need to happen for that to happen? Is the team set up in a way that even if the game gets completely out of hand, it's almost definitely on the back of the guy that I played? So there's different scenarios for this. I'll give you two examples. The first is, let's actually just, we'll go into this right now. Let's look at Giannis versus Jokic tonight. Okay. These two teams are set up somewhat differently, but it's an interesting consideration going into tonight. So we have Giannis and we have Jokic. Both these guys sit in like the stratosphere of fantasy projections. They sit in like that $11,000, $12,000 range because they're definitely worth it. They can just pile up points. They can be incredibly difficult fades when they're on the same slate, especially where there's savings to be had. There you have to think about a scenario of like, probably need to play one of two of these guys, right? Like it's gonna be really, really weird to fade both. So we say to ourselves, okay, in this situation, Jokic versus Jokic versus the Pelicans, Giannis versus the Hornets. There's a thinner spread in the Denver game. The Milwaukee game could get totally out of hand. What do I need to have happen here? And what are the scenarios that can put me in jeopardy of getting buzzed off? This is why I like Giannis in this situation, and I'm willing to risk the blowout piece in order to take Giannis in this situation. So let's look at the scenarios. Yes, could the game get out of hand? For sure. Could this game be up? Could they be up again? The Bucks be up 25 points going into the fourth quarter on a garbage Hornets team? Most definitely. The difference between Giannis and Jokic, I do think, is that where they both have, I would say, similar ceilings, in some ways, I like the floor on Giannis to be a little bit higher in this situation, only because in order for them to get full into blowout territory, it's almost for sure because Giannis went completely off. Couple things here. One, we're still bringing Middleton along very slowly. He was very good off the bench the other night, but he's not starting. That takes one piece of firepower out of the starting lineup. Two, they have two other starters in this for the Bucks in Connaughton and Grayson Allen. Very low usage. Kind of have to hit all their threes in order to be really high value and to kind of start stripping away some of Giannis's value. They have a center in Lopez who's just a low rebounding center in general. So that opens the door for the opportunity for Giannis to be there even in limited minutes. There's a world where Jokic, who has a similar floor to Giannis, but has a team that's a little bit more probably high powered in the way that they can get there in terms of their fantasy scoring. Murray's playing a lot more minutes now. They're getting Michael Porter Jr. back into the mix. They're set up in a way that I don't believe gives maybe Jokic the same kind of ceiling, even if the game stays close, but that I'm not as like it's basically saying that I'm willing to forego some of the blowout risk with Giannis, because I feel like for them to get to the blowout, it would have to be him going completely off, and further down the Bucks chain, it doesn't look as strong as it does for Jokic. And even if you look at Giannis the other night against the Pelicans, they won by 25. He played 30 minutes. Okay, 30 minutes, you're thinking to yourself, this is terrible. It's 30 minutes. It's a blowout. I'm getting crushed off his price. He put up 50 points. 50 points on 20 of 26 shooting, ends up with 13 rebounds. Yeah, am I cherry picking a recent result to highlight a scenario where I want the narrative to work? Most definitely. But if you look at these other games where he's like, if you look back at a previous blowout where they won by 20 and he scored 27, he had 29 points and 12 rebounds, 4 assists with no defensive stats in that game. These games are high enough floor games where it's really hard to think about getting totally crushed on his price, even if the game gets out of hand. Giannis does have some weird games in the game log recently. He's got the terrible loss to these Hornets where he only played 22 minutes and went 9-4 in like the worst fantasy game of his life. I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to think that one is an outlier situation for sure. He got hurt in that game. I'm not worried about that being like, I'm not using that as an example necessarily for what's going to happen. So in the end, I think this is the decision people are going to be making. I think that people might possibly want to talk themselves off of Giannis because of the blowout risk. I would say to you, I think that's a mistake in this game. And I think that he should be the pretty clear play on both sites, even in the $12,000 range. Okay. Couple of other things to highlight going into Tuesday's slate of games. Lakers and Knicks play on TNT. The big question here is whether LeBron James is going to play in this game. Right now, the line has the Knicks at -3.5. That is a line to me that suggests a little uncertainty, possibly LeBron not playing. I think if he was playing, this game looks closer to even. If he was playing, I would definitely take Lakers +3.5 right now. I have already put in a bet on the Lakers +3.5 on the chance that he actually comes back and plays in this one. That he is dealing with foot soreness. It does not sound like it was just a management piece when he did not play against the Nets on Monday. Anthony Davis definitely was the management piece. Anthony Davis is going to play in this game. So that's at least improves the situation from what we saw in the Lakers throwing out on Monday against Brooklyn, which was a total disaster. So Davis is going to play. This line at 3.5 feels a little hedgy in terms of the uncertainty around LeBron. I do think there's a world where with Anthony Davis, the Lakers can probably still hang with the Knicks here. If LeBron is playing, I think that they probably should be, this game should be more like a pick 'em. Probably can't go as far as Lakers being favored because of how the Knicks have played, but it does make a pretty significant difference. I don't know from a a DFS standpoint, this is where I really want to be in this game on the Lakers side of the ball, unless there's LeBron is out, and then we're thinking about playing, the Westbrooks of the world or Dennis Schroeder, even though he kind of stunk last night. We'll have to kind of evaluate that situation. But from a betting standpoint, I think that there probably is some value, especially if LeBron were able to come back and play here. We've seen the Lakers play much better when LeBron and AD are on the court together. They're a positive point differential on the season. The defense improves with AD around. So I think there's a lot to like from the Lakers standpoint on the betting angle. But we're going to have to wait to see what happens with them when it comes to LeBron playing. Luckily, we'll have the information well in advance. I believe well in advance of the 7:30 start. And that's the second game on the slate. On the other side, I think Jalen Brunson's a pretty good value here at 7,500. Minutes have been through the roof for him. Really high floor. Hard to see this game getting totally out of hand in really any direction. Brunson is mispriced for sure on FanDuel at 7,500. That seems like a pretty easy play. And I'm not really probably too worried about that. I think Quentin Grimes is a good value at 4,100 on FanDuel, just because his minutes, and he's 44 on DraftKings. His minutes have been really high. He has to hit his threes. He's the very definition of a 3-and-D guy. So he's got to hit the threes, even at high 30s minutes. It can sometimes be a little iffy about whether he's going to get there. But I do think the Knicks, especially if LeBron plays, are going to need Grimes's just archetype in there to be able to handle some of the defensive duties. So I like the minutes on him being able to stay really high. Hope that he knocks down some trays. Maybe he grabs a spare rebound here or there. Again, this is not a guy who does a ton in the fantasy department, but he's priced like a guy who doesn't do a ton in the fantasy department either. So I think you're in a good spot on the Knicks side of the ball. Like I said, I like the Lakers betting spot in this game. There's I think, and this could be just a fun one to watch. Hope that LeBron plays. It's always better when the superstars play, just strictly from a fan's standpoint, even if the DFS implications get a little bit more muddied. One thing I forgot to mention too on just going back to the Giannis, Jokic, and Bucks piece. One other thing to think about here is, like I mentioned Giannis, but then like the rest of the Bucks guys, Drew Holiday, Brooke Lopez, Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen. I think if you're playing Giannis in this situation because you're not worried about, like, you're just trying to fade a blowout or thinking he gets there, I think you can stack. I think you basically end up having to stack the rest of the Bucks as well, just because at that point you're telling yourself a story about how it happened, and you're basically hedging against the ultimate downside risk, which is one of these other guys is the reason that it went into full blowout mode. And I think it almost has to be one of those guys knocking down a ton of shots. There's the Middleton off the bench. He was good last game. You're a little worried about that because I don't think you can really play him off the bench at the prices that he is and the minutes that he's playing. But I think outside of that, you're not like they have a pretty concentrated rotation at this point. Yeah, I mean, Middleton played 18 minutes. He scored 9 points. I overstated that a little bit. It was the game before. It was the game before against the Pacers where he scored 17 points in 15 minutes. They have such a concentrated rotation right now that I think you just have such a high floor on all those guys because of the matchup. So I forgot to mention that before when it came to the Bucks, but just something to keep an eye on. Couple other news and notes. Kawhi, Leonard, and Paul George will both be playing in this game. I think that Paul George is still coming too cheap on the Clippers. All of the Clippers shots are essentially going through these two guys. That's just the way the team is set up when they both play. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, why not? These guys are superstars. The whole goal is to get them on the court. Last game that they played together, 20 shots for Kawhi, 18 shots for PG. No one else in the starting lineup had double-digit shots. Norman Powell just snuck over double-digit shot attempts with 11. All the offense is running through these two guys with a lot of the minutes there as well. So I think that Paul George still coming a little cheap even with Kawhi back. I know it can sometimes be like a weird spot to think about rostering him in this thing with Kawhi around because you want to play PG just when he's the sole driving force of the offense. But I think at 8,300 on FanDuel, 8,900, a little closer on DraftKings. I think you're doing another guy to keep an eye on here is Vika Zubac. So he's funny because the minutes are completely up and down. I do think that the plan for the Clippers is to especially when Kawhi and PG are there, to have a rim protector in Zubac makes a lot of sense from the way the team is set up. And I think they actually do want to play him minutes in like the mid to even possibly high 30s. It's not gone 100% that way for them in the past because of some context. Like they lost a ton of minutes in the blowout against Cleveland. He lost a lot of minutes in the blowout against the Spurs. There was like a mini blowout where they beat Dallas. The other games that have stayed close, 37 minutes against the Hawks, 34 minutes against the Lakers, 36 minutes against the Spurs, and 35 minutes against the Sixers back in the middle of January. The other games where he's lost minutes have either been because of foul trouble and blowout. I think the 30 plus minutes is the plan for him if things break right. The production can come and go. He's not the first or second or third option in the offense. He's not even going to rebound at a super high volume with these guys, the wings being able to rebound so well and the team just being long in general. But he is priced really cheap on both sites. He's only 5,500 on DraftKings. I think you can easily pull the trigger on that one. Probably a little bit closer at 5,600 on FanDuel, only because you have like Brook Lopez at 6,200 in a better matchup. But I do think Zubac is a guy that's probably going to be overlooked. And I do think that the plan is to play him decent amount of minutes when the game breaks right. Okay. We are going to get out of here for the day. There are some other games going on. They're not as interesting. I mean, Miami and Cleveland, super low total. Everyone's kind of healthy there. I can't really get too crazy about that one. New Orleans getting Ingram and McCollum back here. Not a great matchup against Denver. Do think if you're pivoting off the Bucks thing, Denver's the way to go with 234.5 total in that one. But I just like the Bucks spot a little bit better. DFSR.com is the site. Go sign up for a 7-day free trial to the projection system that's powering all these thoughts and powering our optimal lineups for FanDuel and DraftKings. All good to go. Freeze for 7 days. You jump in the members only chat room and you just ask questions. Our chatters will help you out, but you're always going to have an expert there as well to help you out with any question you have. DFSR.com. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more hoops.